Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out today. My name is Sergeant First Class Leo Almeida Levesque III, and it is an honor for me to stand before you and discuss the origins of Veterans Day. Veterans Day is a day dedicated to honor all the men and women, both living and deceased, who have served in the United States Armed Forces. It is a somber reminder of the millions of Americans who have fought for freedom and the more than 1 million who have died for that cause. In 1918, on the 11th hour, the 11th day, and the 11th month, the world rejoiced and celebrated. After 4 years of bitter war, an armistice was signed. The war to end all wars was over. November 11, 1919 was set aside as Armistice Day in the United States to remember the sacrifice that men and women made during World War I in order to ensure a lasting peace. On Armistice Days, soldiers who survived the war marched in parades through their hometowns. Politicians and veteran officers gave speeches and held ceremonies of thanks for the peace for which they had won. Congress voted Armistice Day a federal holiday in 1938, 20 years after the end of the war. But Americans soon realized that the previous war was not the last one. World War II began the following year, and nations great and small again participated in a bloody struggle. After the Second World War, Armistice Day continued to be observed on November 11th. In 1953, townspeople in Emporia, Kansas, called the holiday Veterans Day in gratitude to the veterans in their small town. Soon after, Congress passed a bill introduced by a Kansas congressman renaming the federal holiday to Veterans Day. In 1971, President Nixon declared a federal holiday on the second Monday in November. Americans still give thanks for peace on Veterans Day. There are ceremonies and speeches at 1100 in the morning. Most Americans observe a moment of silence, celebrating those who fought for peace. After the United States' involvement in the Vietnam War, the emphasis on holiday activities has shifted. There are fewer military parades and ceremonies. Veterans gather at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. to place gifts and stand quiet vigil at the names of the friends and relatives that fell in the Vietnam War. Families who lost their sons and daughters in this war turn their thoughts towards peace and avoidance of future wars. Veterans of military service have organized support groups for such American Legion and veterans of foreign wars. On Veterans Day and Memorial Day, these groups raise funds for the charities, activities, and organizations that help support disabled veterans. This bright red flower became a symbol of World War I after a bloody battle in the field of poppies called Flanders Field in Belgium. An answer to the question of how to pay tribute to these who have served in the latest Great War came in a proposal made by Representative Edward K. Reese of Kansas. Change Armistice Day to Veterans Day and make it an occasion to honor those who have served America in all wars. In 1954, President Eisenhower signed a bill proclaiming November 11th as Veterans Day. On Memorial Day 1958, 2 more unidentified American war dead were brought home from overseas and interned in the plaza beside the unknown soldier of World War I. One was killed in World War II, and the other was killed in the Korean War. In 1973, a law passed providing interment of an unknown American from the Vietnam War, but none was found for several years until 1984. An unknown service member from that conflict was placed alongside the others. To honor these men, symbolic of all Americans that have given their lives in war, an Army Honor Guard, the 3rd U.S. Infantry, the O Guard, keeps day and night vigil. A law passed in 1968 changed the national ceremony of Veterans Day to the 4th Monday in October. It soon became apparent, however, that November 11th was the date of historic significance in America. Therefore, in 1978, Congress returned the observance to its traditional date. As General George S. Patton Jr. had said, "It is foolish and wrong to mourn the men who died. Rather, we should thank God that such men lived." The focus point of the official national ceremony on Veterans Day continues to be the memorial amphitheater built around the tomb of the unknown soldier. At 1100 hours on November 11th, a combined color guard representing all military branches of service present arms at the tomb. The nation's tribute to the war dead is symbolized by the lighting of a presidential wreath. The bugler plays taps. The rest of the ceremony takes place in the amphitheater. Veterans Day ceremonies at Arlington and elsewhere are coordinated by the President's Veterans Day National Committee. Chaired by the Secretary of Veteran Affairs, the committee represents National Veterans Organization. Governors of states and U.S. territories appointed Veterans Day chairmen who, in cooperation with the National Committee and the Department of Defense, arrange and promote local ceremonies. Ladies and gentlemen, I've just given you a brief overview of the origins of Veterans Day and some of these celebrations that go on to celebrate not only the freedoms that have been provided by these men and women who have fought so gallantly for this country, but a means for which you can also contribute and celebrate that as well. I thank you for coming out this day, and have a good evening.